I'm Natalia Lobach, and this is Change Course. Back to life, back to reality. If you are a fan of 90s pop culture, I bring you this amazing episode title today, Back to Life, Back to Reality, after one of my favorite songs by the incredible band Soul to Soul. So look it up. I'm sure you've heard it, and it is awesome. We are titling this episode today, Back to Life, Back to Reality, because here we are. It's September. Can you believe it? My goodness. Well, for many of us, September means back to school. And I know that I've been hearing from so many of my colleagues and friends from everywhere that this is really marking that big back to office transition that many of us thought was going to be happening in the spring and through the summer. But, you know, there's something about September, I've got to tell you. So if you are working through back to the office and you are having some trouble, this episode is for you. I have to admit that previous to the last 2 years, in 2019, and certainly as part of my consulting work, I spend a lot of time on client site. I'm there because for so much of change, you need to be in the action. You need to be seeing what's happening. You need to be, identifying those things that are occurring, those things that you want to change. And as I mentioned in the past 4 weeks over August through Culture Month, you really, for me, I really feel like culture is something that you need to experience in person in an organization. It's been one of the hardest things that I've had to do through virtual, typically through these virtual weeks and months and years that we've had to try and figure out what an organization's culture is. It's just not clear to an outsider when an organization goes virtual. You really need to be in the physical space with people physically to have a full understanding and grasp of what is that culture. So I have to admit, for me, the idea of back to the office in many ways is going to be helpful. But at the same time, that is a little bit selfish because I do know how many people are struggling with this right now. So from the perspective of somebody who's worked with a lot of change, one of the reasons you're having such a hard time with this is because it's change that is happening to you. This isn't change that you are in control of. And so let's remember, let's go back in time to March 2020 when we all got that company-wide email being like, you can no longer come to the office. Remember what that felt like? That was just so like nothing we had experienced before. And it's almost hard to think back that far. It feels so like it was part of a different life or a different time. But I do remember what it felt like. And this feeling of, oh, we are going to be in this for a while. We are not going back anytime soon, was really challenging to deal with at the time. And again, it was this change that happened to us. We didn't have control over it. The difference was that it was an externally driven circumstance. And so it really wasn't perceived as a power imbalance at that time. If you had to stay home, it was because of the pandemic. It was not because of a leadership decision. And in a lot of ways, that was a bit easier to accept. But now this whole back to office thing is all driven by company policy and leadership. And if you are not the leader, which many of us are not, you must be feeling quite conflicted about this. And I'm not talking about the people who want to go back to the office 5 days a week and are super happy about it. That's great. I'm really glad for you. But for those of us who have built really wonderful, rich routines based around how we work most effectively and have had the freedom to figure that out over the course of the past 2 years, I see you and I know how you're feeling. So one of the things is just acknowledge that part of the emotions that you're feeling are because you feel like you don't have control, and because you feel like this change is happening to you, and because you feel like somebody is saying, thou shalt do this, and that you don't have a choice. And for many of us, economic participation is a necessity, not a choice. And so we have to find work. We have to, make money. We have to, sustain families and livelihoods, etc. So yeah, if you're struggling with this, it's okay to be struggling with it. It probably feels really difficult, and that is all right. Probably also feels really weird to be thinking about having a full office again. I know many of us who did the transition period through the summer, so many people were still partially working from home or on vacation. A lot of people have taken time off this summer to rest and restore, which has been really good. But September is really where the rubber hits the road. Everybody is back. So, wow, that's going to be interesting. And I think now, if I had to go back into an office environment, I would find it distracting. I would find it difficult. And so there are certain types of work that I could do in that environment and other types of work that I could not. So acknowledging that and thinking that through is fair as well. It's not easy to get used to that level of distraction and stimulation again, because, for many of us, we've been able to find fairly quiet places and fairly quiet times. For some of us, maybe it'll be a relief too. I remember when starting, this whole thing 2.5 years ago, my child was very young, and that was incredibly challenging. At the same time, if you do have little ones, it can also be really jarring and really hard to think about not having them with you or in your space. As you're commuting on your way, or, finding your way back to an office environment. The other piece too is around how we've built our routines. I think to myself about how I used to execute an incredibly complex set of events throughout a morning and then through an evening, as I would get myself ready, my son ready, drop at daycare, go to the train, get on the train, go to my office, and go through that whole routine in reverse as I would come home. And I think about that now and I think, how on earth did I do all of that? I seem to get exhausted after doing one thing, or two things in succession these days. And so, thinking through what those routines look like and how we plan those routines, and how we plan break points into those routines is going to be important as we transition, because it is picking up a whole new set of tasks and routines that likely we have forgotten how to do. And it requires a lot more brain power. So if you are feeling tired, it's that, if you remember what it's like to go through an IT implementation or, my favorite, update your Windows operating system and have to learn where all the new buttons are and how things work. And my goodness, it's overwhelming. But that's exactly the same process that you're going through. It's that learning process, it's that adoption process and implementation. And yeah, it does feel awkward and weird and difficult. But as the behaviors and the patterns are created and then repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, they will become a lot easier to execute as you go forward. So cut yourself some slack and realize that, executing a complex pattern of behaviors and events in a short amount of time is not something you're going to get right on day one. So give yourself a little while to warm up and ease into those routines again. So I really hope that this transition of back to life, back to reality, as an adult now, I always feel that pull of September, that back to school feeling, that newness feeling. And I hope that whatever this transition holds for you, that it can also hold something new and exciting and different about how you do things or about how your life is, as in many ways, September itself can be a return to school, return to normal, and return to things in many ways. So if you're struggling, I see you. I really hope that you can work through it. I hope that some of the change theory and items that we've talked about have been helpful. And I wish you all the best of luck as you get back to life and back to reality. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, I invite you to like, rate, share, and subscribe because it helps others find us. Our music is Levity by Emily Clausen. Change Course can be found wherever you get your podcasts, and we have an accessible version with fully edited captions on YouTube. You can find the link to this version on www.charthouse.ca in the Change Course podcast show notes. While you're visiting us, sign up for the Change Navigator newsletter. We're launching shortly, and you'll get a monthly dispatch of all things change and hear about the upcoming launch of ConnectedChange.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to change course.